Hi, Stephanie. Thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. Every time I see you, I just miss you so much. Just to tag on what she said a little bit, it is so important to buy books from indies, always and right now, of course, especially. Um, Yeah, thank you to everyone who pre-ordered books. I signed a whole bunch of them last week. I saw so many familiar names and friends in there, and it really felt like I was surrounded by friends again. I've been very, very housebound. I'm still incredibly nervous about the situation out in the world, and it was just nice seeing all of you in that way again. So thanks to people who pre-ordered. Thank you to people who bought from your own indie. And just a reminder that you don't even have to buy my book tonight from an indie. The idea is that you can, go to your reading list and pull any book that you're interested in. And I hope that you will consider supporting Malaprops tonight, supporting your local indie. That's really why we do this. They're the ones who have been putting on these events during the pandemic. You don't see the big guy doing that. It's really booksellers like Stephanie, like Patricia, who's also here helping tonight, who are making me, who are letting me into your homes tonight. I'm so grateful for them. They are like genuinely real friends, and that bookstore means a lot to me. So I'm always happy to be here. So tonight, thank you all. We are here, if I can pull it up, to celebrate my new novel, The Woods Are Always Watching, which twice, while kind of like practicing what I might say earlier today, I called There's Someone Inside Your House, which is actually my last novel. But this one, this is the one that's releasing today. I'm really excited about it. This story is about two teenage girls who go on a backpacking trip in the woods to save their crumbling friendship. They both graduated from high school and they're on their way to college. One of them is going out of state, very far away, and the other is staying in the same city. There's a lot of tension between them, so they decide, like, why not? Well, this last weekend together, we'll go into the woods. They don't know a lot about backpacking. One of their brothers kind of gives them some tips and then they're off. And as you can imagine, things don't go well. And then things really don't go well. And then something very, 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 very bad happens. It's been a little tricky talking about this book and figuring out what to say and what not to say. When my editor and I were making the copy, that's the little summary of the book, when we were deciding what to put in there, there was kind of a big element to the book that we decided, well, we'll leave out and kind of allude to. But as I've been talking about the book more and more, I feel like I do want to be a little more clear about the contents of this book. This is a very, very human, realistic horror novel. There's not a twist in the book. We're not hiding a twist. It's just that halfway through this book, like, things become a lot more clear and it changes, and that problem is very, very human. It's not supernatural. It's not the Blair Witch Project. I love all of those, but my interests in horror and true crime are very, very connected. And the things that scare me personally in real life are those things that I can imagine actually happening to me. So there were a lot of stories that I was pulling from real life into this book. So some of the things that might even seem a little more fantastical, unfortunately, really aren't. So yeah, it's a grisly, kind of nasty, gruesome book, because that's what I like. Yeah, so this the other really exciting thing about writing this book was that it is my first full-length novel that takes place here in Asheville, more specifically in the national forest that surrounds here. It's called the Pisgah National Forest. And the reason why I did that is a really, really direct result of my last book. So in There's Someone Inside Your House, this book had 9 points of view. It was 2 locations, rural Nebraska, where like my husband and I actually took a road trip out there. We took thousands of photographs. I filled a notebook with notes. Part of the book also takes place on the Big Island of Hawaii. And unfortunately, I did not get to visit there, but I did do a lot of research, read a ton of books from, people who actually live there, firsthand accounts. So, and then with those 9 points of view, every one of those characters had really, really different interests, and interests that were very different from mine. So each time I entered into a new voice, I had to kind of learn a whole new thing. And by the end of that book, I was really, really tired of research. And that's something that I never really expected to say. I am a former librarian. I love research. I really enjoy it. There's always a lot in all of my books. But I really, I hit a limit, you guys. It was so much. So I thought like, haha, I'm going to game the system. Instead of 9 points of view, I'm going to go down to 2. Instead of, 2 far away locations, I'm going to go to my own backyard. And then like, jokes on me, this book, which is also, you can kind of see there, it's shorter. It's my shortest novel yet, which is what I wanted. I wanted a really tight, nasty little thriller. It took just as long. In fact, I think it took a little bit longer than all of my other books to write. And I think part of that was the atmosphere that I was writing the book in. And that this book, I started writing it in the fall of 2017. And I finished it this June, like a couple months ago. That's when the book finished. And so that was during the entirety, all 4 years of the Trump presidency. It was, I was writing this really dark book during the day. The research that I was doing for it, because there's still always going to be research, was also very dark. And then, I would turn on the news, and the news was also very, very dark. And I went to my therapist and I said, I'm okay now, but I am a little concerned. There's no light in my life right now. And he's like, well, you're right. One of those has to go, and it can't be your job, and it can't be the research that helps you do your job. So it's got to be the news. So for the first kind of half a year of this book, I did try to step back and protect myself a little bit. And then at a certain point, you all know, you all went through the last 4 years as well. It just became impossible to do so. And then when the pandemic hit, it became more impossible than ever. And all the protests last summer, and suddenly, there was a lot happening. And so some of you might know that this book was supposed to be released last autumn. And I'm so sorry for everyone who pre-ordered it last year. Thank you. I love you. I appreciate you. Thank you for your patience. It was pushed back largely because of the pandemic. It was kind of another casualty of it. What happened was that my editor and I were about 2 months out from being done with the book. Her name's Julie Strauss-Gable. She's phenomenal. I've been working with her since my first novel. And she and I have kind of developed this relationship that works well for us. It might stress a lot of other people out, but where we really we push things until the very last possible second. And so we knew we had about 2 months left of really intense work on this book. And then suddenly she was working from home for the first time and figuring out how to do that. And the news was kind of exploding and things felt a lot more important. And so suddenly it wasn't just us struggling with this time frame. It was also every single person who works at my publisher, right? Penguin, all the people on the team who are doing copy editing and trying to get into the school and library market, doing online marketing. It's a lot of people. And suddenly we were about to make a lot of people's schedules extraordinarily difficult. And so we made the call together to give it that space that it needed, to give us that space that we needed to get okay again. And we decided to push it back a full year. So that is what happened. We were so close. It was good. But the kind of incredible thing is that by slowing everyone down in this process, we made a good book really great. And I'm so proud of the work that we did in the last year. And I'm so grateful that I was given that time. It is not a thing that every editor would support. And it's also a thing that like maybe not every spouse would support either. Because the other thing is that when you decide to push a book back, of course, you're pushing back your paycheck too. It's an additional year without pay. So it was not a decision that I took lightly. And I really appreciate all the support that I got from all of you too. But I thought some of you might be wondering what happened there. And that's what it was. Let me look at my notes. This is the first time I've done a solo event virtually. And so normally I'm used to, like back and forth with someone. It's very strange to just it looks like I'm talking to myself. I appreciate all of you who are silently, invisibly hovering around from all around the world. It's really cool. Another reason why you should be supporting these independent bookstores, right? We come to you. Oh, right. I just wanted this. So while I'm talking about why this book was slowed down, I just wanted to throw this out to anyone who might be a writer who's watching, or really any other creative type, or even just someone who might be like get their schoolwork done slower than most of their classmates. I just want to say, like, that's a totally normal thing. And people work at really, really different paces. And it's so easy, early in my career, I played that comparison game pretty hard and was very hard on myself. Like, why can't I do this job faster? A lot of young adult novelists release a book a year. Mine are every 3 or 4 years. And I just want you guys to know, like, I've come to peace with it. And I really, really want to spread that message. Like, whatever your pace is what it is. And that's fine. There's this really great aside I have for you. So my friend Allie Carter was also a young adult novelist. She wrote this great book called Dear Allie, How Do You Write a Book? This came out a year and a half ago, I think. And what's really unique about it is that it's a how-to writing book for younger readers, for teens. And what she did was she interviewed a whole bunch of her friends, a whole bunch of young adult novelists, and asked us gave us a list of questions about our writing process. And then she included them in this book as a way of showing how many different ways there are to be a writer and how there really is no one right way. And to just prove to you guys how slow I really am. So here's the page that she did about, the question is, what's a great word count day for you? And as you can see, it goes on to the next page too. And most people are like, a great word count day. So we're talking like above average. We're talking a great work day. They're like 5,000, 10,000 words. A lot of people in the like 2,000, 2,500 range. Great word day. Stephanie Perkins, 500 words. I am the only person, you guys, who is in the hundreds, not thousands. And this is a great word day. My average word day is actually 250 words. It's very slow. So if you ever feel frustrated about anything related to your process, you are not alone. You can do it any pace. So back to my books. I'm asked a lot about the transition that I made from romance to horror. When I was first published in 2010, the book was called Anna the French Kiss, and it did surprisingly well, and it set me up on this really, really lucky, wonderful career path where very quickly I became known as someone who could deliver a really sweet, swoony romantic read. And that was great. And the only problem with it is that, I consider myself a reader before a writer. Reading is my main passion and my writing fuels it, but I love to read, and I love to read widely. There is not a genre that I am not interested in. There are certainly some that I read a little bit more of than others. But if you get a really good, interesting, passionate author talking about something that they love, I'm in. So it was really strange to suddenly be known as this one thing. And, in a way, it's good. It means, the marketing team is doing its job. But right away, like I bristled a little bit, it was that like teenage reaction of like, oh, like that's not me. Like it's part of me, right? But it's not all of me. Um, so really early on, I decided that I had to publish something else soon. So that in my mind, at least, I don't know if it's true or not, but in my mind, seemed like a way to kind of open up my career to lots of other options in the future, right? Before I felt too locked down to this one thing. And so I approached my agent and my editor and I said, I want to write a teen slasher. I love them. I don't think it's what they wanted to hear from me, but I was really fortunate in that they were supportive. And yeah, so that's what came out of me next. And I got to say, like, what's coming after these books is different again. The very next thing will be something sweet again. It is not related to the Anna books. So I'm just going to sorry, mention that right now, but it is much sweeter and will appeal to those readers. But then I've got like lots of other good ideas that I'm very excited that are like on the books, ready to go. And one of them is another horror novel, but that's even further down the line. To be really honest, I need a break. So yeah, the other thing that I'm getting asked about a lot these days, of course, is the movie, which is really exciting. There's Someone Inside Your House was adapted into a film for Netflix. It'll be released October 6th. It was also supposed to come out last year, and it was also a casualty of the pandemic. They had some reshoots that they needed to do, and everything was shut down. So it was the strange year where I feel like I'm kind of living last year all over again, like all the same releases. It's been a little wild, very Groundhog Day, but I'm really excited about it. I can't say a lot about it. It's this thing that I have to kind of like talk around, but I have seen it. It's fantastic. I was really nervous to watch it, like very, very sick to my stomach, actually. And within a couple minutes, it was really when the title screen flashed on, like I burst into this cackling laughter. And I looked at my husband and I was like, oh my gosh, it's good, isn't it? And he said, yes, it's good. And there was just this kind of like shock went over us and glee. I'm really excited for people to see it. It stays very, very true to the characters and the setting. There is a pretty big difference in the plot, though, which I wanted to mention now. I think some people will be really excited about that. Some people might find it a little jarring at first. And so I just wanted to put that out there that I really, really support the changes that were made. So when I wrote the book, there was this little bit of a challenge involved that I hadn't been anticipating. Like, I had anticipated that, oh my gosh, I'm going from romance to horror. I have to figure out how to do that, how to write a totally different kind of book. It's very, horror is very plot oriented, which was not my strength. I had to learn how to do that. And then, then the setting and the characters go kind of on top of that. So there were all of those skills that I was figuring out. But then on top of it, there was this thing where I realized why there aren't a ton of slasher books, right? There are a ton of movies. It's one of the most popular genres in horror, but there aren't a lot of books. They're out there. They're great, but there aren't many of them. And part of it is the genre itself is so built into like jump scares and like seeing a reflection in the window, or, these amazing music cues. It was all of these tools that were like out of my tool bag that I had no access to. And so I did kind of had to like reverse engineer how to get the same kind of feel, but in book form. And so what Henry Gayden had to do, he's the screenwriter. He did the great Shazam movie a few years ago. He had to like reverse engineer my book back into like cinematic form, right? So the plot had to change. And, and I read the screenplay. I thought like, this is fantastic. But there was this part of me that was like, oh, I don't know how much this is going to feel like a Stephanie Perkins movie anymore. And that was okay. But what really surprised me while watching it was this feeling of like, oh, like there are my characters, there's my setting, like the theming's all right. Like this is a kind of movie that I would watch even if I had nothing to do with it. I feel really, really, really lucky that it got into the hands of people who had all the same horror influences that I did, who like got this project in such a big way. Patrick Bryce was the director. He did the Creep films, which are so good. Dan Cohen was kind of the main producer who shepherded it through. He did Stranger Things. Like they were just people who grew up in the same era that I did, and they got it, you guys. It's good. I'm excited for you to see it. I keep having to check my list, right? No one here to ask me questions. I really wanted to throw out some horror recommendations for you. So for all the people who've already purchased my book or who aren't going to purchase it, which is also totally fine, horror is not for everyone. I did want to throw out some book recommendations, things that, well, they might not be for the people who don't want the horror, because here comes more of it. But I did want to throw these out, things you can pop in your Malaprop's cart tonight. The first one I want to recommend is The Ruins by Scott Smith. This is maybe my favorite outside horror novel. So, mine's in the woods. This one is in the jungles of Mexico. I don't typically reread horror novels. I have read this 3 times now. It's such a fast, sharp, riveting read. Every time I start it, it's either reading it in one sitting or maybe 2. It's so good. There was a movie based on it a few years ago. The movie's fine. Don't compare the movie to the book. The book is wonderful. Here's a great young adult novel, Bent Heavens, by Daniel Kraus. Daniel's one of my favorite young adult horror novelists. This was his release last year. And unfortunately, because of the world we're living in, it kind of got buried. So I wanted to bring it to all of your attention. It's my favorite of his books so far. This one is alien horror, which is not normally like my top choice. It's awesome. It is really, really dark and angry and intense. Like Daniel always has like things to say in the way that really great horror novelists do. And I was so impressed with the book. I think it's phenomenal. I think more people should read it. I think it would make a good movie. My next one here, Joe Hill, Heart-Shaped Box. This probably is my favorite horror novel. If I really, really had to pick, it's his first novel. It's about like this aging rock and roller who collects murderabilia. If you don't know what that is, it's people who collect like paintings by John Wayne Gacy or letters written by Jeffrey Dahmer. Really, really dark stuff. And he gets a box, and the box is not empty. There's a ghost in the box. It's so good. And like, it's cool. You know what I mean? Like some books are just cool. Yeah, he wrote a cool book. Here's a classic that I love. So when I started writing, There's Someone Inside Your House a few years ago, I took it on myself to like fill in some of the horror novels, like the classics that I had missed. I read a lot of horror, but of course there are always gaps in anyone's reading. And one of those was this book, Johnny Got His Gun, Dalton Trumbo. It's not traditionally horror, but it belongs to that category. That's my favorite category, where it's realistically horrible. And for anyone who did not read this in school, lots of people are assigned this book in school, or at least they used to be. I don't think they are anymore. I never was. It's about a man who's in the hospital. He's been in the war, I want to say it's World War One. I could be wrong, could be World War II, but he's in the hospital, and he is missing his arms and legs. His face has been pretty much blown off. So he's lost all of his senses. He's essentially like a head and a torso and a brain. And each chapter goes through his life in terms of one of those senses or one of his appendages. And it is truly horrific. A lot of body horror, if that's your thing. It's mine, sorry. But I was so blown away by this novel. It eventually, it like instantly became one of my favorites. I think really highly of it. Yeah, Johnny got his gun. And then the last one that I'm going to throw out here, I love recommending stuff. Thank you for letting me do this. It's one of those holdovers from when I was a librarian and a bookseller. I was a bookseller as a teenager, and in my 20s, I was a librarian. And there's nothing I love better than putting like a good thing into someone's hands. And this last one is Shock Value by Jason Zinneman. This one is nonfiction. It is about the birth of modern horror cinema. It's phenomenal. It is so readable, unputdownable for anyone who likes horror history and who really wants to understand it in a greater context. It's the best one that I've ever read on the subject. I just love the heck out of this book. So now we're about a half hour into it. I thought I would open it up to Q&A. Stephanie, if you want to come back in. Hi. And I'll start there. I know there are already some questions. And then if we run out, I can just keep talking. I'm really good at talking, you guys. I can just talk your ear off. Like I'll figure it out. We'll work it out.
Well, I don't think that'll be an issue because we've gotten a bunch of questions.
Oh, good.
Which is great. This is a great audience. I actually want to start by just saying, because I know you're not seeing all of the chat, how much love is pouring out of the audience for you. Congratulations. And just a lot of love from the audience. So I just want to share that with you. And reflect it back to the audience because, it's great to see that. And everyone here is just really supportive and congratulatory. And so there you go. So I want to start with that.
Thank you. My voice is cracking. Thank you.
Yeah, I think we've done our job if we've made an author's voice crack, right? It's like, who is it? But so I'm dating myself in a big way now. It's like Barbara Walters, right? Making people cry. So most people, I feel like with the target demographic of your audience, there's a lot of people who won't get that reference, but I'll stand by it.
I got it.
Excellent. So we got a lot of great questions. There's one question, there's a version of a question that we've gotten from a few people. So let's start with that one. And you've already started to go down this road. So I'll just ask you to expand as much as you would like. There are several folks who are curious about the differences between writing YA romance and YA horror, which are obviously very different. And specifically, is there any sort of preference? What are the different challenges? That we've got a lot of inquiring minds want to know about that.
Yeah, thanks. I'd be happy to talk more about that. There are some pretty big differences, as one would guess. I touched on it a little bit earlier, but for me, the big thing was plotting. And if you're writing a horror or a thriller, obviously the plot is kind of what's generally developed first. It's the thing readers are there for. Often there's a whodunit element to it. I kind of removed that halfway through both of my books because I didn't want to deal with that because I'm not a plotter. And I'm like, well, here's who it is. And now let's figure out the why. And let's just try to get away from this person. That's kind of what I'm a little more personally interested in. And also that's more where my strengths as a writer are. So that was a skill that I had to develop and really practice and work on. It doesn't come as naturally to me. I did find it a little easier writing the love stories. There's also a difference in tense here, and that I wrote my really sweet stories in first person, and the new ones are in third person. And it's a really practical reason. And that when you are writing something so heavily plotty, it's just a lot easier to tell it. You have more flexibility if you don't have to say so narrowed in on a single person. I do always try to keep with a third person I try to keep it as narrowed as possible because I like that closeness. I want it to feel as close to first person as possible, to be honest. But there was that practical thing too. So that was also a skill that I had to work on. And I did that actually between the two things. I edited these two anthologies, and I also wrote a short story for each anthology. And those were my first, that's the transitional thing. They were sweet stories, but they were written in third person. And that was actually me just practicing how to do it because I knew it was coming down the road. So that was also a big thing. And really now, so in my day-to-day, I'm working on something very sweet again right now. And it's been kind of marvelous, and that I really do feel like I had strapped on a lot of extra challenges, things that I wasn't used to, that I had to learn how to do, that I take a lot of pride. I feel like I'm really, really proud of what I accomplished. But it was like I wrote those two books with like weights strapped to my back. Mm. And now that I'm writing this other thing, it really feels like not only have those weights been lifted, but I am much stronger now because of it, because I've been working all these new muscles. So it is, like in theory, maybe this book will be written a little faster. Like I doubt it, knowing me, probably not, but that's what it feels like right now. Right now, I'm kind of zooming along with all of these new skills brought to me, which is really exciting. Yeah. But honestly, like when I made that first transition, there's actually a lot of romance and there's someone inside your house. And it was because I liked writing it and it was hard to escape it. And initially it was like this really small part of the plot, and it just kind of got bigger and bigger. And it's one of the things that I'm really excited about in the movie, is that they really, really got that relationship right. And it's like the chemistry between those actors is electric. It's very, very, very well done. And that's where I look at it and I'm like, oh yes, that's a Stephanie Perkins movie. So yeah, this is the first one that I didn't have anything romantic in it. And it's largely because, also, as I alluded to before, I was writing it during this really crummy, misogynistic period of American history. And I wasn't feeling it, guys. Like, it's about two girls overcoming men. So like, that's what I had to write about.
Right? No need to put too fine a point on it.
Yeah. In fact, I put so much of that into the book in the first draft, the initial drafts, that by the time it reached my editor, she was kind of like, whoa, okay, like I agree, but maybe not all of this. And we had to lift quite a few things out where it was just clearly something that I had, like a rant I had to get off my chest. It'd be like 2 pages of rant gone from here, like a paragraph of rant gone from here. Like we just had to take so many things out because I was just so clearly like dealing with the world.
You were working some stuff out.
It was.
Yeah.
It was. Oops.
Yeah, so that question leads into another question, and I really like what you said about building new writing muscles, that you have now. And someone else asked if there are other genres that you are interested in branching out into.
Yeah, there definitely are. There's a couple coming up sooner than later, but and also I would say also age groups. I love young adult. I'm really, really passionate about writing for teenagers, and I'm also ready to write for other audiences. So I think that's more what you can expect before other genres. But I think the only thing you might never see from me, and I shouldn't say never because who knows, like science fiction, I think is great. And I don't have a science brain, so I can't imagine ever writing that. But I love fantasy. I love fairy tales. I love books for children. I love books for adults. Like there's a lot, like anything in that arena, you can expect to see from me someday. Yeah.
Excellent. So I think there'll be a lot of books that we can say that's a Stephanie Perkins book, and it'll all feel, perfectly right and
I think
and
so.
appropriate. Yeah.
I hope so. Yeah, that was one of the goals with putting my real name on the horror novels as well, because there is this discussion like, should I release it under another name?
Mhm.
And a lot of authors do, and it's the right decision for a lot of people. And for me, um, I just really believe strongly that all of these things are a part of me, and I just wanted my name on all of them. But I do think there is a bit of a through line with my voice. I think it's really hard to kill my voice, and it just keeps popping up. So
Yeah.
I think the horror novels still feel a lot like my really sweet romance novels. They're very clearly characters who came from me with my voice and my interests.
Speaking of characters, we did also have a question about whether or not there are any previous characters that show up in this book, like from There's Someone Inside Your House, in particular.
I love that this question was asked. It's the first time I've been asked that about this book so far, and the answer is yes. All of my books are connected to each other. The connections between Anna, Lola, and Isla, and There's Someone Inside Your House were much more vague, and you would have to really read those books back to back to catch them all, but they were there, and they were there, mainly for my own entertainment. I think there were 3 references to my other books in that one. And then this one, I was finally able to connect my anthology stories. And there's a pair of characters who walk through the beginning of this novel who are not related to the rest of the book. And they are the characters from my anthology, because I wrote the same characters in both of those stories. So it was finally a way to like take these 2 outliers and plop them in. There also is a reference to the Osborne Slayer, which is what I call the killer in my last book. So yeah, they're all connected. I can't resist. It's fun for me.
Yeah, that's great. And I suspect that the person who asked that question has read enough of your books closely enough to have picked that up.
Yeah,
and
I think so.
Answer the question. That's great. We had another question, a little bit of a process question. And you had mentioned, dealing with the pandemic and how it pushed back publishing and your writing process in general. But this person asked specifically about how the pandemic has impacted your writing. If it has, has it changed it dramatically? Was the real question.
Yeah, I would say no, with an asterisk. It affected me in the way that it slowed me down. And I think it slowed down a lot of authors. I think it slowed down a lot of people in every business, period. It just got harder to do the job. I think last June was the most difficult month of all, of course, because the protests were happening and it felt so much more important than my dumb job, right? Like it was, last summer was really, really tough. And I'm so glad that we decided to put this book on hold, because it really gave me a chance to process all of what was going on in this country, which I think was really, really important. So it just basically slowed me down. I was really fortunate in that it didn't change my day-to-day life. I had been working from home anyway, and my husband had a job that he was an essential worker, not in like a typical category you would think, but he was. So he was still going in every day. He actually never had a day of working from home. So our regular schedule did not change. I think interestingly enough, so I'm public about this. I have obsessive compulsive disorder, and it's mostly fine, not a problem. And last year it was fine. In fact, it felt like the sort of thing like I've been preparing for this moment my whole life. Our house was fully stocked with food and supplies already. We were already really careful about things. And then what changed was this year and the masks coming off. And suddenly that was when my brain was like, the alarms started signaling. And right now I'm very, very housebound because of that and just wanting to wait to see how things shake out. So it is this kind of very weird delayed reaction, but through all of that, still working every day.
Excellent. We had, I think this was actually the first question we got by email. Someone asked if this book, the new book, The Woods Are Always Watching, was inspired in any way by any other books or authors. You've made some great recommendations, but that leads to a more general question about what your horror influences might be. Is it right?
Yeah. So it came from, I'll say this one came a little cinematically as well. The biggest book influence was The Ruins, which I just wanted a book that was that tight and unrelenting. But I just really enjoy woodsy horror movies. And it's that simple, right? There's also this really kind of funny practical consideration when writing any kind of genre book these days, really, that takes place in the real world, and that is the phone situation. And that if someone has a phone, it's a lot easier to get out of a bad situation. So with my last book, I set it in rural Nebraska because I looked at a Verizon map and said, like, where is there no coverage? Where are they going to have a problem calling people? And so now it's like it's in the mountains here. I did go out just to double check. I went to the area where my girls go camping and backpacking, and yep, the signal was gone. So I'm like, great, that's out. Yeah, so it was inspired by lots of those. I mean, you set a horror novel in the woods or a horror movie, like, I'm gonna watch it. I like them all. I think my favorite one in the last few years is this film called In Fear. Not a ton of people know about it, but it was it's about a car in the woods, oddly enough. So I think it's an Irish film. It's this couple who's at a music festival. They don't know each other that well, but they do decide, we're going to take this little weekend trip together away from the festival at this like really nice little hotel in this kind of rural area. So they leave the concert, they go, and once they reach the property, then they get lost, and it's just them driving around and around and around, and there's someone out there messing with them. And it's like such a small idea, and I loved it so much. Not a ton of people know about that one. So things like that were on my mind. There was a really great one that, of course, now it's slipping from my brain, which has a really strong parallel to my book, actually. Takes place in the Canadian wilderness. And it's like this couple who goes on a camping trip, and like a creepy dude shows up. And I just think that if you are a woman or a human, but especially a woman, nothing is more terrifying than suddenly being confronted with a strange man. And that's the thing that scares me the most. And so that's what went into this book, when you're already in a situation where you're quite remote, quite helpless. And then the worst thing possible shows up, and it's a man that you don't know. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's where that came from.
Well, that actually answers another question that we got, which was requesting movie recommendations. You recommended you recommended horror books, and then someone, chimed in and said, "What about some movies?" So
I've got actually a couple more if you'll
Okay,
indulge
excellent.
me, because it's my favorite thing.
Yeah.
I actually wrote them down beforehand, anticipating I might get this question, because whenever I was asked it with my last book, my mind immediately went blank and I would forget the names of everything. So I do have a couple more written down. I Saw the Devil. It's a South Korean horror film. I avoided it for several years because of the word devil in there, and devil like just isn't a subject that like scares me much, or like I'm not religious. So it's just not a fear that I have or that really affects me. Like there are good ones out there, but like it's never my top choice for horror. Turns out this is not religious in any way whatsoever. It's for like people who want, like, what if Silence of the Lambs were like even grosser and scarier? It's it's a revenge on a serial killer. So it's a revenge story, but the guy is getting revenge on someone who murdered, I believe it's his fiance. It's really intense. It's really good. Again, it's that like realistic horror that I enjoy. The Innkeepers. That's by the guy who did Ty West, who did The House of the Devil, which a lot of horror buffs know, which is a great one. That one is a devil movie. The Innkeepers is this really small ghost story that takes place in this hotel that's about to be closed. It's like the last weekend, and it's the two employees, and some ghostly stuff happens. It's really quiet. There's a lot of just like these two people talking at each other. I'm into it. I love it. I think for some people it'd be like too slow. I think it's fantastic. I like quiet horror. And then the other thing I just want to throw out is that I have a special subset of horror that I love, which is Christmas horror. If you merge those together, I'm into it. There's a
Krampus.
Yes, I loved it. Rare Exports. It's this Finnish film.
Yeah, I saw
you
that.
know it. Yep. Very creepy Santa in that one.
Very creepy. Yeah.
There's one called Christmas Evil, where the bad guy is a toy maker who goes nuts, and he dresses like Santa and goes out and kills people. I think it's made in the 70s. It's great. And then there's also Black Christmas, which I really loved, the original one from 74. Which is like really, really early slasher. It's very fun. Yeah, I love anytime a holiday merges with horror.
That's great. And we talked earlier in the sort of green room portion about first how beautiful you look, how lovely your dress is, confirm that it's a dress, and also just the perfect contrast between the very bright sunny daisies and the talk of horror. And
I'll share what I told you that my therapist said, and that was when I was getting ready to tour for my last book. And he's like, "Oh, does this mean your wardrobe will be changing? Because I typically wear these very floofy floral dresses." And I said, "No, this is who I am. I am both."
Exactly. Yeah, it's great. We have so many questions. I need to move a little faster. It's just great to, that's on me, y'all. I apologize. This is a great question specifically about, that relates to the book, without being specifically about the book, which is what are your camping experiences like? It seems like that
is good.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's actually I'll go ahead and say it's from Megan Shepard, who is another writer. And
Megan, hi. She lives here in Asheville too.
Yeah. So have you had spooky woods experiences?
No, I was not a camper. I did a little bit when I was younger. Like my father was an Eagle Scout, so he took my sister and I out camping and stuff. I never really took to it that much. I love the woods, but like I love beds and locked doors more. So I had a little bit of experience as a kid, and then when I started writing this book, I realized like, oh, I'm gonna have to go and do this thing for research. And thankfully my husband, like he really did drop, we put it off for so long. It had to take place in August. The book takes place in August. So I wanted to go out the same week that my girls went out with the same kind of equipment. The good news is I wrote characters who had my skill level. So I didn't try to make someone like better at it than me. That was the only way the book could be written. So we did go out. I would put it off as long as possible. It was like the last day of that week. And I told him like, we have to. So he came home from work. We packed the car up. We went out that same night into the woods where essentially the same area where my characters spend the night. All my locations, I changed the name of them, but they are all real to here. I changed the names just so that, like a little creative license, but that way that I could have a thing to reference. And I was fine. I was taking all of these notes. I was busy, just my head was full. And meanwhile, I've been telling all of these really terrible stories to Jared about bears, about serial killers in the woods, like true stories. And that's what was going on in his mind the whole time. I was just like, oh, that's what the way like leaves sound against a tent. Great. Writing down those notes. And so I slept fine. He did not sleep at all that night.
Poor Jared.
And then recently it should be noted that we gave away our tent. So we will not be camping anymore.
One and done.
That's right. It was enough.
Excellent. Yeah. And there are bears.
There are.
Yeah.
There are. And I
all
learned
kinds of stuff. Yeah.
all of the local stories, all of the true stories. It was, there's a lot of intense bear research.
This area and places not far from here though. And I suspect this is, this played into your writing as well. People who kill people like to escape to the North Carolina woods on occasion. And that makes national news. So that's another. They sure
do. I never had a chance to work Eric Rudolph into the book. He was one of our more famous Denzians of the woods.
Yeah.
But Gary Michael Hilton was a serial killer who was literally called the National Forest serial killer. He some of his last victims were in our woods. He worked in Florida and Georgia as well. So that story was fresh in my mind. There were a couple other that are too terrible, frankly, to tell over Zoom, and then many more from around the country. There's a podcast called Park Predators for anyone who's interested in true crimes, and it is crimes that solely take place in our national parks. I'm not kidding. There are a lot of them. I'm not trying to scare you, but I am trying to tell people, like, be careful when you go places. Always tell someone exactly where you're going and when you'll return, so that if there is a problem, they can start looking for you right away, because there are scary people who operate out there, and it's a thing that keeps me up late at night.
Yeah. And it's a real issue. I mean, there's a long list of reasons why you need to be careful when you're out in the woods, right? But the thing about humans, and I love the tagline for the book, about bears not being
the only predators in the woods.
The only predators in the woods, because at least with bears, like, you can educate yourself about what bears are likely to do, and what they respond to and don't respond to, and how best to behave depending on the type of bear. And granted, anything can always happen, but there is a certain kind of consistency with bears being bears. You can't count on humans.
No.
In any way whatsoever, right?
Yeah.
So it's people are, and in horror in general, it's no matter what the monster is, people are always scarier,
Absolutely.
And especially, if there's an apocalyptic situation, right, where monsters have ruined everything, but who do you really have to be afraid of after everything's ruined? It's people.
Every single time.
Every single time. Yeah, people. So so it's a good reminder to be extra careful, and not just because of bears and snakes.
It is, they're really out there. It's no joke. There was a story 1 week ago in Utah that, if people are curious, they can look it up. It's very similar to my book.
And I probably won't.
Nope. I don't recommend it.
It's enough to know in general.
Yeah, I don't recommend it.
So let's shift gears a little bit, because we had a couple people ask Sweet questions. One was, where do you find joy? And one was, what gives you hope to keep writing?
Oh my gosh. Oh, this question just like floored me.
They're really,
Where do I find joy and hope? Oh, those are like really intense, deep questions, aren't they? Well, there are always good people out there. In general, I'm a little cynical when it comes to people, as you may have picked up on. But there are so many good people out there. I mean, it's so cliche. It's the Mr. Rogers, like look for the helpers. But there's like this coda to that is often forgotten, which is the idea that, like, he was talking to children when he said that. And so it's up to us as adults to be those helpers, right? And not to just look for them. And I think by taking positive action, it does make me feel a little more hopeful about the world. It's or just hopeful in general. It can be really tough, especially right now. But I think taking action in any small way, educating yourself, I think those are really good steps. I'm 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 hopeful in general. Well, I kind of think we're still headed down a really dark path, but I do think we're quite resilient as well. And so at some point, I do think some resilience will kick in. I don't know. It's kind of like so far in the distance, it feels faint, but I think at some point that happens as well. And then in terms of finding joy, I lead a very joyful life. I'm a pretty happy person. And I have figured out what I like and I indulge in that. And that is my house. I love being at home. The pandemic is useful for that and keeping me at my house. I really enjoy decorating and painting, and I love the holidays. I'm really excited. Tomorrow is September 1st, which means my Halloween mugs come out to play. I'm so excited. I just bought this morning like a vintage Halloween decoration online. Like, I'm getting in the spirit. Those are things that give me joy. Playing board games with my husband, like talking to the people who I love over text. Like, I'm a pretty happy person. And I think it's because I'm pretty good at zeroing in on the things that make me happy.
Well, that's wonderful. And I know, I'll just say, in the time I've spent with you, you always strike me as a pretty happy person. And and one of those people that, I feel better when I talk to you. So I think the rest of us can find some joy and some hope, in our interactions with you when we're fortunate enough to interact with you. So thank you for that.
That is a deeply kind thing to say. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
It's true.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So it is 7:03. Would you be okay?
How should we do that?
I'm not sure. And again, folks, I'm sorry, because it's just, it's fun to just sort of talk with Stephanie. So, I will say, if you're okay to take one more question, because there's actually a really cute one, and I may not have gotten to all of them because y'all have asked such great questions, and thank you. So I apologize for not getting to every single one of them, but I feel like we covered a lot, and thank you, Steph, for that. But I wanted to ask this question because I always love the idea of thinking about book characters as people who have lives, right? Mm-hmm. And so we have a question: how are the characters from Isla, Lola, and Anna doing? What are they up to these days? And then, of course, the inevitable: do you plan on writing anything about them in the future? But even if you're not writing about them, do you have a sense of
absolutely,
what's going on with them?
Yeah, they're doing really well. Anna was always, she's the film nerd that I am. That's where I channeled a lot of that. And I like to think, when I wrote that book, her aspiration was to be kind of like a Roger Ebert on television. And now I think with the way that the world has changed in the years, I think she would have grown up and she's a podcaster now. And she'd be talking about it on podcasting, and an actual film critic in the world too. I think she'd be doing very well. Spoiler for the end of Isla, like she does get engaged at the end of that book. And yeah, her and Etienne are happily married and he's supporting her and excited for her career. With Lola, she was really into costume. And I imagine she continued that, and that she's still, I think she probably moved from San Francisco to LA. I think she misses San Francisco a lot, as I would, but I think she's working in that industry, making really incredible creations for film. Maybe she and Anna overlap a little bit. There's still, I don't know. And again, I write about boys who are very, very, very supportive. So I imagine Cricket is supporting her as well. And of course they're still together. All of my characters are still together, guys. No worries. I wouldn't break them up. And yeah, Isla and Josh, they are also doing well. They went to college in the same area, and both graduated. Josh has his graphic novels published now, and Isla is still figuring out what she wants to do. She probably has a lot of odd jobs here and there. I think it's totally okay to not know what you want to do with your life. And that was kind of where I put that energy in that character. For a long time while writing that book, I didn't know what kind of person she was, whereas Anne and Lola before her had been very specific. And I came to realize, like, oh, it's okay to not know what you want to do with your life and to keep figuring out and working on it. And so I bet she's still working on it, but they're all happy. And will I write about them again someday? Maybe. Like, it's not out of the question. There's definitely a character who I still really would love to give her own book. It's been in the works for a long time, and I'm just a really slow writer, guys. Sorry. Like, you'll probably see it 40 years from now when you don't want it, but that's when I'll be ready. I don't know.
Well, thank you, Stephanie. It's been great to talk to you, as always. Really appreciate it. And congratulations again on the new book, and on being able to pull off being a romance writer and a horror writer.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like that's no small thing, right? Like,
thank you.
Yeah, make you swoon, scare the crap out of you.
I hope so.
Yeah.
It's a weird transition. It's not what people wanted from me, but it's what you got.
Well, I think it's great. So thank you so much. Congratulations again.
Thank you.
I want to thank everyone in the audience again for coming. You all have been great. And we, again, so appreciate your support of Malaprops and of Stephanie and all of the authors that we host. And we appreciate you, and we look forward to seeing you again. And then final words to you, Stephanie.
I just want to echo what we talked about in the beginning, how important independent bookstores are right now. And by supporting me through them. Thank you, all of you who pre-ordered through Malaprops. These booksellers really are my friends, and I care really, really deeply about them. And you are impacting their lives and their livelihood and keeping this store in my hometown. And that really means a lot to me. I encourage all of you to keep buying from my independent bookstore, from your independent bookstore. It really does make a difference. It's that thing that you can do that will bring you joy. Aha, tying it back in. But thank you to everyone who's here watching and who has supported me through the weird transition, or who is here for the first time. I'm just so grateful for all of you. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. And thanks again, everybody. Please stay safe and well. And we look forward to seeing you again soon. Good night.